I 15F feel the need to share my story, hoping someone might understand or offer advice about my situation with my parents, mom 42F, dad 46M, and brother Ethan, 10M. What started as subtle favoritism has now escalated to the point where my education and future are at risk. Let me start from the beginning. I grew up in what seemed like a typical upper-middle-class family. Dad works in finance, mom runs her own real estate business, and we live in a nice suburban house in a good school district. Until I was 5, life was, well, not exactly warm and loving, but stable. My parents provided everything I needed materially, even if they were often distant and focused on their careers. Everything changed when mom got pregnant. I still remember sitting in our living room, playing with my dolls, when I heard mom on the phone. Her voice was filled with an excitement I'd never heard before. Yes, it's finally happening, we're having a boy. Those words hit me hard, even though I was too young to fully understand why. Looking back now, it was the first time I consciously realized I wasn't what my parents had wanted. Within weeks of confirming it was a boy, my parents started preparing for his arrival. Their preparation mainly involved sending me to live with my grandmother, 72F, my dad's mother, who lives about 30 minutes away. They framed it as a special treat, you'll have so much fun with grandma, but even at 5, I could sense they just wanted me out of the way. The day they dropped me off at grandma's house is forever etched in my memory. Mom was already showing, her hand constantly resting on her belly as she rushed through a quick goodbye. Dad helped carry my suitcase to the door, patted my head awkwardly, and reminded me to be good for grandma. Neither of them seemed particularly concerned about leaving their 5-year-old daughter with a relative, even if it was her grandmother. What was supposed to be a temporary arrangement, until the baby comes, turned into 2 years that changed my life completely. Grandma's house was nothing like our suburban home. It was smaller but filled with books, warmth, and the constant smell of baking. As a retired university professor, she approached everything with a mixture of intellectual curiosity and emotional intelligence that I'd never experienced before. During those 2 years, my parents' visits became increasingly rare and brief. They'd stop by maybe once a month, spending most of their time talking about Ethan, his developmental milestones, his first words, his first steps. They never asked about my achievements, not when I started reading chapter books above my grade level, not when I won the school spelling bee, not even when my teacher suggested I skip a grade. Grandma, however, noticed and celebrated everything. She helped me develop a love for learning that went beyond just getting good grades. We'd spend hours reading together, from classic children's literature to age-appropriate science books. She taught me chess, introduced me to basic algebra through puzzles, and always encouraged my curiosity. Questions are how we grow, she'd tell me, a stark contrast to my parents' frequent, not now, we're busy. But when I was 7, Dad suddenly appeared at Grandma's door. It's time to come home, he announced, not quite meeting my eyes. Your brother needs you. I'll never forget Grandma's face, a mixture of worry, anger, and resignation. Before I left, she hugged me tightly and whispered, remember, my dear, you can always come back here. Always. Coming home was jarring. My old room had been transformed into an elaborate nursery for Ethan, complete with hand-painted murals and custom furniture. I was moved into the former guest room, a smaller space with basic furniture and bare walls. Mom's explanation was simple, Ethan needs more space for his things, and you're a big girl now. You understand, right? That began my new role as not just a sister, but essentially a third parent. By 8, I was watching Ethan while Mom made business calls. By 9, I was changing diapers and warming bottles. Don't misunderstand, I love my little brother. He's a sweet kid who didn't ask for any of this. But I was still a child myself, struggling to balance schoolwork, chores, and what felt like constant childcare duties. Through all of this, Grandma remained my lifeline. I spent every weekend I could at her house, and she continued to encourage my academic interests. While my parents obsessed over Ethan's every move, she celebrated my achievements, helped me with advanced subjects, and constantly reminded me that I could be anything I wanted to be. Now, at 15, despite all my responsibilities at home, I've maintained exceptional grades. My teachers have been incredibly supportive, writing glowing recommendations that helped me secure interest from several prestigious private high schools. When Riverside Academy offered me a partial scholarship based on my academic achievements, I thought maybe, finally, my parents would see my worth. Instead, when I showed them the acceptance letter and scholarship offer, my parents' response shattered any hope I'd built up. Mom barely glanced at the prestigious letterhead before shaking her head. "We need to focus our resources on Ethan's future," she said, her voice carrying that familiar dismissive tone. "He's showing real promise in baseball and piano, and those lessons aren't cheap. Besides, the local public school is perfectly fine for you." I took a deep breath and tried to approach it logically, the way Grandma had taught me. I explained how the scholarship would cover half the tuition, how my test scores were in the top 1% of applicants, and how this opportunity could open doors for prestigious colleges later. But Dad cut me off mid-sentence, not even looking up from his phone where he was probably checking Ethan's baseball stats again. "Look," he said, his voice carrying that patronizing tone adults use when they think they're being reasonable, "we've already invested a lot in Ethan's activities. His baseball coach says he could get college scholarships if he keeps developing. We have to think about the long term here." When I mentioned that Grandma had offered to help with the remaining tuition, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Mom's face hardened instantly. "We're not taking handouts," she snapped. "And you need to stop running to your grandmother every time you don't get your way. It's time you understood your place in this family." That phrase, "your place in this family," echoed in my head for days afterward. I've spent years trying to be the perfect daughter, maintaining straight as while essentially acting as Ethan's unpaid nanny, never complaining when they missed my academic awards because of his baseball games, staying quiet when they spent thousands on his music lessons while telling me the school band's instrument rental fee was too expensive. The situation escalated last night during what Mom called a family discussion. I found both parents sitting at the kitchen table, wearing expressions that made my stomach knot. Ethan was at his piano lesson, conveniently absent for what was about to unfold. "We've been thinking," Mom began, using her real estate agent voice, "Ethan's growing up, and he needs more space for his studies and music practice. We're going to convert your room into a study area for him and move you into the storage room upstairs." The storage room she referred to is basically an unfinished attic space, freezing in winter, boiling in summer, with a ceiling so low you can only stand upright in the middle. When I pointed out these issues, Dad barely looked up from his phone. "We'll put in a space heater and a fan. You're barely in your room anyway, always studying at your grandmother's house." Something in me snapped. Years of pent-up frustration and hurt came pouring out. "Why does everything always have to be about Ethan?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "I'm your child too. I've worked so hard, done everything you've asked. Why is it never enough?" The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice ice cold. "This attitude is exactly why we worry about spending money on your education. You're being selfish and ungrateful. Do you know how many children would be thankful just to have a roof over their heads?" I retreated to my room and called Grandma, trying to muffle my sobs. She listened patiently, then said something that made me stop crying. "Your success threatens them because it challenges their narrative. They've invested everything in Ethan being the special one, and you keep proving that their favoritism is a choice, not a reflection of merit." Then she told me something that explained so much. When I was born, my parents had been deeply disappointed I wasn't a boy. They'd even considered trying immediately for another child but decided to focus on their careers first. They had it all planned out, Grandma explained, a son to carry on the family name, take over your father's business, fulfill all their dreams. When they finally got Ethan, they poured all those delayed expectations into him. This morning, I overheard Mom on the phone with her friend, complaining about my attitude problem and how I'm jealous of my brother. "We've given her everything," she said, "and this is how she repays us, by trying to take resources away from Ethan's future. I'm writing this from Grandma's house, where I fled after school. She's offered to let me live with her again, like when I was little. Says she can help with the private school tuition, that I shouldn't have to sacrifice my future because of my parents' favoritism. But I'm torn. Part of me feels guilty for even considering it, like I'm abandoning my brother. Ethan's not at fault here, he's just a kid who happened to be born male in a family that values sons above daughters. He doesn't understand why I've been crying more lately, why there's tension at dinner, why I spend more time at grandma's house. The private school needs an answer by the end of the week. Grandma says the choice is mine, but that she'll support me either way. She reminded me that sometimes the hardest choices are between what we've been taught we owe others and what we owe ourselves. I keep thinking about all the little moments that led here. The way Mom's voice changed when she announced she was having a boy. The casual way they sent me to live with Grandma. The proud smile on Dad's face when he introduces Ethan at his office parties, while I stand quietly in the background. I guess what I'm really asking is, am I wrong for wanting more? For not being content with being the reliable, invisible support system for my brother's dreams? For considering taking my grandmother's help even though it will cause family drama? How do I navigate this without completely destroying my relationship with my parents or damaging my brother's innocent trust in me? This isn't just about school choice anymore. It's about whether I have the right to prioritize my future over my family's expectations. It's about whether I can break free from the role they've assigned me without breaking myself in the process. I welcome any advice, especially from people who've been in similar situations. How did you handle it? Do you regret your choices? And most importantly, how do you find the courage to choose yourself when everything and everyone around you says you shouldn't? Update 1, it's been 6 months since my last post, and I need to share what's happened. A lot has changed, but some things remain frustratingly the same. First, the good news, I accepted Grandma's offer and enrolled in Riverside Academy. The partial scholarship, combined with Grandma's help, made it possible. The academic environment here is everything I hoped for: challenging classes, engaged teachers, and peers who actually care about learning. My parents' reaction was exactly what you'd expect. Mom barely speaks to me now, communicating mostly through terse text messages about when I need to be home to watch Ethan. Dad acts like nothing's changed, though he makes pointed comments about ungrateful children and family loyalty whenever the topic of school comes up. The financial situation has gotten more complicated. Mom and Dad are now spending even more on Ethan's activities. He's in 3 different sports teams, has private coaching for baseball, and they've upgraded his piano lessons to a more expensive instructor. Meanwhile, they've made it clear they won't contribute a penny to my education. Grandma has been amazing through all of this. She's not just helping with tuition, she's created a space where I can actually focus on my studies. I spend most weekends at her house now, and she's even set up a proper study area for me. The contrast between how she treats my academic achievements and how my parents dismiss them couldn't be starker. Last week, something happened that really highlighted the situation. I won first place in the state mathematics competition. When I told my parents, Mom just nodded and immediately started talking about Ethan's upcoming baseball tournament. But when I told Grandma, she took me out to dinner to celebrate and helped me look into summer mathematics programs. The academic counselor at Riverside suggested I start thinking about college applications early. With my grades and extracurricular activities, she thinks I have a shot at some top universities. Grandma's already talking about helping with college tuition, but I feel guilty about accepting more help from her. Things hit a new low last month when Mom and Dad did actually convert my room into Ethan's study. I'm now in the attic room, though Grandma helped make it more livable by installing proper heating and some bookshelves. Still, the message was clear: in their house, I'm an afterthought. My advanced math teacher, Mrs. Anderson, has become something of a mentor. She's the one who encouraged me to enter the state competition, and she seems to genuinely care about my future. It's strange how sometimes the support you need comes from unexpected places. The hardest part remains balancing my academic goals with family obligations. Mom still expects me to watch Ethan whenever she has real estate showings, which is becoming more frequent. When I tried to explain that I need time for studying and extracurriculars, she accused me of putting myself above family. Speaking of Ethan, that's been the most difficult part. He doesn't understand why I'm not around as much anymore, why I can't always help with his homework or attend his games. The other day, he asked me if I was mad at him. It broke my heart having to explain that no, this isn't about him at all. Grandma says I need to start setting boundaries, but it's difficult when every boundary I try to establish is treated as an act of betrayal. Dad recently told me that family should come first, conveniently ignoring how they've consistently put Ethan's needs before mine. I'm maintaining straight A's despite everything, and I've started looking into summer internships that could help with college applications. The counselor thinks I have a good chance at some prestigious programs, especially with my math competition wins. The college discussions are still a few years away, but they're already looming. Mom made it clear they're saving all their resources for Ethan's college fund. Sometimes I wonder if they ever saw me as anything more than a placeholder until they got their son. I guess what I'm asking now is, how do I balance building my future with maintaining family relationships that seem to depend on my subjugating that future? How do I handle the guilt of accepting grandma's help while knowing it's causing family tension? And how do I explain to my little brother that my increasing absence isn't his fault? I'm grateful for all the advice I received on my last post. It helped give me the courage to accept grandma's help and choose my own path. But now I'm facing new challenges, and I could really use some guidance on navigating this next phase. Update 2. It's hard to believe how much has changed in the past 8 years since my last update. I'm now 23, and looking back at my teenage posts feels like reading about a different person, though some of the old patterns with my family remain stubbornly in place. First, the major life updates. I graduated from MIT with a degree in computer science and mathematics, thanks to a combination of scholarships and grandma's unwavering support. I'm now working at a major tech company in Boston, earning more than both my parents combined, though they don't know that part. Speaking of work, that's where I met James, 25M. He teaches computer science at a local high school while working on his master's in education. We've been married for 6 months now, and he's shown me what unconditional family support actually looks like. His parents welcomed me with open arms, no conditions or comparisons attached. The dynamics with my own family have evolved in unexpected ways. Remember how my parents were saving everything for Ethan's college fund? Well, he decided college wasn't for him after 1 semester. He's now working at Dad's company, being groomed to take over the business eventually. My parents were devastated at first, but quickly rationalized it as entrepreneurial spirit. The irony isn't lost on me, all those years of prioritizing his education over mine, and I'm the one who ended up with the degree. But here's where things get complicated. Despite their past treatment, I've started helping my parents financially. It started small, paying for some of Ethan's remaining college debt, then helping with house repairs when Dad's business hit a rough patch. Grandma thinks I'm being too generous, especially given our history. But I can't help remembering how she helped me when I needed it most. Maybe this is my way of passing that forward, even if my parents don't entirely deserve it. The relationship with Ethan has actually improved since he dropped out of college. Without our parents' constant comparisons and expectations, we've developed a genuine sibling relationship. He was the best man at my wedding, and his speech brought tears to my eyes. He talked about how I was always there for him growing up, how he never realized until he was older that I was sacrificing my own time and energy to help him. Mom and Dad attended the wedding, though Mom spent most of the time making comments about how it was rushed, and how we should have waited until Ethan was settled first. Dad gave a stilted speech about family duty and tradition, managing to mention Ethan's business prospects 3 times while saying nothing about my accomplishments. The most touching moment was when Grandma gave her speech. She talked about watching me grow from a confused 5-year-old into a strong, independent woman. She mentioned my academic achievements, my career success, and most importantly, how proud she was of the person I'd become. I saw Mom stiffen during this speech, especially when Grandma pointedly mentioned how some people couldn't see the treasure they had in front of them. James has been incredibly supportive through all of this. He understands family complexity. His own parents divorced when he was young, so he gets the whole complicated family dynamic thing. He's the one who encouraged me to maintain relationships with my parents and Ethan, but with healthy boundaries this time. The financial support I'm providing to my parents is substantial, though carefully structured. I pay directly for specific expenses rather than giving them cash, and I've made it clear this support is contingent on them respecting my boundaries. Last month, when I helped with their mortgage payment, Mom actually cried, not from gratitude, but I think from the realization that their backup child had become their financial safety net. Grandma, still sharp as ever at 80, lives nearby and remains my closest confidant. She's become a grandmother to James too, sharing stories about her teaching days and offering wisdom about education that helps with his career. She still maintains that I'm too generous with my parents, but she understands why I do it. I'm writing this update partly to process everything, and partly to show others in similar situations that it does get better. You can break free from toxic family patterns while still maintaining connections on your own terms. Yes, I'm careful with boundaries. I have a separate account for family expenses. I never commit to more than I can comfortably give, and I always discuss major financial decisions with James. The most satisfying part? I did it all my way. Every advanced math class, every late-night study session, every scholarship application, it all led somewhere, despite my parents' lack of faith. And now, ironically, I'm in a position to help the very people who once thought investing in me wasn't worth it. To that scared 15-year-old girl living in an attic room, it gets better. So much better. And sometimes the very things your family sees as acts of rebellion become your stepping stones to a better life. Update 3. It's painful to write this final update, but I need to share what happened at our recent Thanksgiving gathering. The facade of family harmony I'd carefully maintained over the years came crashing down in a single moment, all because of my 5-year-old son Alex's innocent curiosity. We were all gathered at my parents' house, James and I, Alex, Ethan, Grandma, and my parents. Things had been tense but manageable, following our usual pattern of polite conversation and carefully avoided topics. The financial support I'd been providing over the past few years had brought a kind of uneasy peace. The breaking point came when Alex found my mom's phone while playing. Being a curious kindergartner, he started looking through it and suddenly asked, "Mommy, why does Grandma have you saved as cash cow in her phone?" The room went completely silent. James reached for my hand under the table, and I saw Grandma's face darken with anger. Ethan looked confused, then horrified as understanding dawned. My father suddenly became very interested in his plate, while my mother's face turned red. "It's just a silly nickname," Mom tried to laugh it off, but Alex, with the brutal honesty of a child, continued, "But what's a cash cow? And why are there dollar signs next to it in the contact name?" I felt something inside me break. All those years of trying to maintain a relationship, of helping them financially despite their treatment of me, of making excuses for their behavior. The fact that they'd privately reduced me to nothing more than a source of money, even while accepting my help, was the final straw. Grandma was the first to speak, her voice trembling with rage. "After everything, after how you treated her, after she's been helping you despite it all, this is how you think of her? As your personal ATM?" My mother tried to defend herself, saying it was just a joke between me and your father, but Ethan cut her off. "A joke? Like how you sent her to live with Grandma when I was born? Or how you made her live in the attic? Or how you refused to help with her education but expected her to help with mine?" What followed was years of pent-up grievances pouring out. My parents tried to deflect, claiming they'd done their best, that I was being overly sensitive, that family should stick together regardless. But there was no going back. I stood up, picked up Alex, and quietly said, "We're done. No more financial support, no more pretending everything's okay. I've spent years trying to earn your love, but I see now that was never possible. You'll be receiving no more help from your cash cow." James backed me up completely, already gathering our things. Ethan, to my surprise, stood up and said he was leaving too. "I've watched this my whole life," he said, "benefited from it even. But I can't anymore. This isn't what family should be." Grandma rose as well, her voice stern as she addressed my parents. "I've watched you diminish her for years, hoping you'd change. You've just proven you never will. Don't expect to see any of us again." We left together, me, James, Alex, Ethan, and Grandma. As we drove away, Alex asked if we'd made Grandma and Grandpa sad. I held back tears as I explained sometimes we have to leave situations that hurt us, even when they involve family. That was 3 months ago. Since then, my parents have tried reaching out multiple times, first with angry messages about family loyalty, then with guilt-tripping about their financial situation, finally with tearful apologies that still managed to include hints about their monetary needs. I've maintained complete silence. Ethan has been staying with us while he figures out his next steps. He's decided not to take over Dad's business after all, saying he can't be part of anything that was built on treating me as a backup plan. He's enrolled in community college classes and is discovering who he is outside of our parents' expectations. Grandma, who now lives in the in-law suite we added to our house last year, has been invaluable in helping all of us process this change. She's become the family matriarch we all needed, showing Alex what unconditional love really looks like. James has been my rock through all of this, never once questioning my decision to cut ties. He's helped me set up therapy sessions to work through the years of emotional manipulation, and he makes sure every day that Alex knows he's loved for exactly who he is. To those who might find themselves in similar situations, wondering if they should maintain toxic family relationships out of obligation, sometimes walking away isn't just an act of self-preservation, it's an act of self-respect. It took my 5-year-old son's innocent question to make me see what I should have realized years ago, that no amount of financial support or dutifulness can buy genuine love and respect. I'm done being anyone's cash cow. My worth isn't measured in dollar signs or family obligations. These days, I'm focusing on the family we've chosen and built, one where love isn't conditional, where success is celebrated rather than exploited, and where my son will never have to question his place or value. Ethan said something profound the other day. You know, sis, you spent years trying to prove your worth to them. But the truth is, they're the ones who never proved themselves worthy of you. This will be my final update. Our story isn't about tragedy anymore, it's about breaking free and building something better. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most beautiful beginnings.